Hello everyone, today we are going to start with the chapter We Are Not Afraid to Die If We All Can Be Together. This chapter takes us through the adventurous journey of a family in the sea. The story starts from July 1976 when author set sail from Plymouth, England with his wife Mary, his daughter Suzanne, and son Jonathan. He and his wife had spent 16 years mastering seafaring skills in British waters. The author then describes the structure of their boat, Wave Walker, which was 23-meter long and was made from 30-ton wood. They tested it in the roughest weather they could ever find. The journey was of 3 years, covering around 1,05,000 kilometers. The first leg of their journey passed pleasantly as they sailed from west coast of Africa to Cape Town. Before heading towards east, they hired two crewmen, namely Larry and Herb, to help them tackle one of the world's roughest seas, the Indian Ocean. On their second day out of Cape Town, they began to encounter strong gales. Author remarks that gales did not worry him, but the size of waves was alarming. The waves went up to 15 meters, which was as high as their main mast. On December 25th, author and his family were 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Despite bad weather, they celebrated their holidays with small Christmas tree. There were no improvements in the weather thereafter. On Jan 2nd, the waves became huge. They were sailing with only small storm jib and still making 8 knots. As the ship rose at the top of each wave, they could see endless, enormous sea rolling towards them. The sound of wind was painful for their ears. To slow down at the boat dropped the storm jib and lashed a heavy rope in a loop across the stern. The first indication of impending disaster came at 6 p.m. with an enormous silence. The sky immediately grew dark and an enormous cloud covered their ship. Then, with horror, author realizes that it was not a cloud but a gigantic wave like no other seen by him in his lifetime. It appeared vertical and was twice the height of the other waves with a frightful breaking crest. The roar increased to thunder as both moved towards the crest of the wave, and for a moment Arthur thought that they might ride over it, but then an explosion shook the deck. Torrent of water broke into ship and Arthur's head smashed into the wheel. He accepted his approaching death with losing consciousness. Unexpectedly, his head popped out of water. Subsequent waves tossed him around the deck line like a rag doll. His left ribs were cracked, mouth was filled with blood, and teeth were broken. Somehow he found the wheel, lined up the stern for the next wave, and hung on. There was water everywhere in the ship. He could feel that there was water below, but he could not abandon the wheel to investigate. But then suddenly his wife appears, opening the front hatch, and screamed that they were sinking. Arthur tells her to take the wheel. Larry and Herb were pumping like madmen. Clothes, crockery, charts, tins, and toys swim deep about in the deep water. Arthur, half swam, half crawled, went to children's room and asked that they if they were all right. The children replied positively, but Suzanne said that her head hurts a little, pointing towards big bump around her eyes. Then, after finding screw, hammer, and canvas, he came back to deck. He somehow managed to stretch the canvas and secure waterproof hedge covers across the gaping holes. More problems were created when their hand pumps started to block because of debris floating around cabins and the electric pump short circuited. The water level rose. Spare hand pumps had also been wrenched overboard along with sail, jib, dinghies, and main anchor. He suddenly remembers about an electric pump kept in the chart room, and thankfully it worked. It was a tiring and scary night for the family. There were no replies to their mayday calls. Suzanne's head had swollen alarmingly. She had two enormous eyes and deep cut on her arm. When Arthur asked her about her injuries, she maturely replied that she didn't want him to worry when he was trying to save them all. By the morning of January 3rd, the water level was under control by the pumps, but there was still a tremendous leak somewhere below waterline. On checking, he found that the nearly all the boat's main rib frames were smashed down. There was nothing holding up the whole section of the starboard except few cupboard partitions. After surviving 15 hours, Wavewalker wouldn't hold together long enough till they reached Australia. Author checked the charts and calculated that there were two islands few hundred kilometers in the east. One of them was Amsterdam Island, which was a French scientific base. Their only hope was to reach these islands. The Great Wave had put their auxiliary engine out of action. On 4th Jan, after 36 hours of continuous pumping, only few centimeters of water was left and they had to deal with only incoming water. Mary found some corned beef and cracker biscuit and they ate their first meal in 2 days. At 4 p.m., black clouds began building behind them. Within an hour, the wind was back to 40 knots. The weather continued to deteriorate, and by dawn of January 5th, the situation was again desperate. When he went back to children's cabin, John asked him that they were going to die. Arthur assured him that they could make it, but he went on and said, "We are not afraid of dying if we can all be together." Arthur was speechless. He left the children's cabin, determined to fight the sea with everything they had. That evening, Mary and Arthur sat together holding hands as the motion of the ship brought more and more water in through the broken planks. They felt that their end was near. By the morning of 6th Jan, with wind easing, he tried to get a reading on the sextant. Back in the chat room, he worked in on windspanes, drift, current, etc. In an effort to calculate their position, the best he could determine was that they were 150,000 kilometers of ocean looking for 65 kilometers wide island. When he was planning, Susan, moving with pain, joined him. Her left side of head was swollen and her blackened eyes narrowed to slits. She gave him the card she made. On the front, she had drawn a funny drawing of Mary and him with the words, "Here are some funny people. Did they make you laugh?" I laughed a lot as well. "Oh, I love you both. So, this card is to say thank you and let's hope for the best." Author checked and rechecked his calculations. They had lost their main compass and he was using a spare one, which was not corrected for magnetic variation. About 2 p.m., he went on the deck and told Larry to steer a course of 185 degrees. If they were lucky, they would reach the estimated location. With heavy heart, he went to take some rest and amazingly dozed off. He woke up at 6 p.m. and was sure that they might have missed the island, but Jonathan appeared and asked him if he could have a hug. Arthur asked why he is getting a hug. He replied that because he was the best dad in the world and best captain. Susan said in matter of fact that they found the island. Arthur rushed on the deck and gazed with the relief at the stark outline of island. Though it was only a bleak piece of volcanic rock and little vegetation, for him it was the most beautiful island in the world. The next morning, 28 inhabitants of the island cheered as they helped them ashore. Arthur was grateful towards Larry and Herbie and also towards Mary, who stayed at the wheel for those crucial hours. He thought of 7-year-old girl who didn't want them to worry about her injury and 6-year-old boy who was not afraid to die. Thank you.